First of all, I'd like to welcome everyone to the African Textile Museum. We are certainly happy to have you. This area of the African Textile Museum is called the baobab tree, hence the tree over your head. In Africa, when we come to discuss about family matters, about what's happening in the village, about how we proceed with war or famine or children being born or weddings, we all gather under the baobab tree. So this is our baobab tree. So welcome to the African Textile Museum. Welcome to the Artist Talk for the incredible, impeccable Miss Therez Fleetwood. How you doing, Therez?
Can I just first say, I really want to give thanks to Andrea Williams because she came to the first exhibit. A week later, she's like, we got to do something else. So she organized all of this, so thank you.
Well done.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Now that's the kind of initiation that we call it takes a village, okay? It's not a me project, family. This is a we project. It really does take a village. Everything that you see here is inspired by places and people and countries that I've visited. Everything in the museum. So Therez is bringing her source of inspiration through her new collection, the Harlem Renaissance
Reverie.
Reverie.
Reverie means the dream.
Yes. So Therez, can you give us an idea of your point of inspiration for this collection? What inspired you to create this collection?
Actually, I had been wanting to do something with fashion and art for about 10 years now. And it went through 3 different ideations in terms of what it was going to look like. And I'm gonna call out Caitlin over there. So how it ended up here was, initially I was working with visual artists who was painting on the garments, and then it went into me really focusing on the Harlem Renaissance, and how that came to me was through a dream. I was, well, not through a dream, it could have been a nightmare, I don't know, but I was awoken at like 4 o'clock in the morning in November of 2022. And I woke up and it was like this heavy thing on my chest, and all I heard was, it's time. And I'm like, oh, this is coming out of COVID. What do you mean it's time? And then I heard fashion art. And I'm laying in bed and I'm like, well, dag, if I did this collection, I literally have to take 6 months to a year off to do it. Not knowing it was gonna take a year and a half to do this collection. And I was like, I don't have time. I'm hustling in the industry, working with my friends, everything's copacetic. And then the strike happens. So that was my ancestors or God or the energy of the universe saying, okay, you said you wanted to do this, we're gonna set it up. No shame to everybody in the industry. I did not cause the strike, okay? And then that strike came, and then the writer's strike came. And so that was 9 months afforded to me to create this collection. But the first inspirational piece came from Jacob Lawrence, the blue coat on the end. When I was in school at FIT, I went to a thrift store, and that painting, the jitterbug, caught my attention, and I loved it because it was so colorful and it was so whimsical and playful, which is a lot of my personality, those of you who know me. And so I held on to that for years. So when the inspiration came, Andrea and Caitlin, we all worked together for 9 months on a movie, on a TV show. And towards the end of it, we had to create these little sweaters. And Caitlin had the job of doing this type of applique on one, and that's when it clicked. I'm not gonna work with a visual artist anymore, I'm gonna do applique. So that came from the inspiration from you doing all of that work. And then as I got started, it lent itself so perfectly to creating this type of artwork, so.
And it is very meticulously done. How much time does it take to do one piece? Because everything is done by hand, and it looks like it took a lot of time.
Yeah, the entire collection is literally sewn on, thousands of stitches on garments. And every piece, most of the pieces started off in a different silhouette. And what I mean by that, I would sketch it out what I wanted, but then as I was blowing up the artwork and laying it out, it started to shift the design a little bit. And with that shift, of course, like this piece right here, the card game, that started off as a men's vintage 1940 trench coat. But when I blew up the artwork, it was too small for this big trench coat, so hence this beautiful piece here. But literally, I thought, and everybody knows how fast I work in the industry, I'm like, I could knock a coat out in a week. Wrong. A coat literally takes about 1 month to make, and when I say 1 month, that means getting up. Listen, there were mornings, because we were on strike, so all I did was work on this. I got up at 8 in the morning, did not go to bed until maybe midnight, but I would get up, brush my teeth, probably still in my pajamas, working nonstop because the energy was pulling me towards this. And it's funny because when I laid out the Jacob Lawrence piece, that was one of the first pieces that I did. I laid it out on the table, and I swear, as I was laying it out and putting this energy just shot through me. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? But I know now that was my ancestors saying, girl, you are on to something, okay? And that's how it's been flowing for me ever since. I really feel like I'm guided through this entire process. Even today, we were talking about this earlier, even today, the way things are lining up. I don't take this for granted. I've been talking to my ancestors the entire time, making this, and they've been talking to me. So there's something creatively when you really tap into energy and powers greater than we are, because we know as creative people, everything does come through here. It doesn't come through here. It comes from the heart first and then through there.
Well, actually, it comes from your DNA memory, because everything is already inside you. There's 400 years of markers when we are born of consciousness that has been deposited in us as a people from our ancestors. So you start out with a divine connection. You start out with a DNA memory. That's the same way we deal with our trauma and everything else. The art is there as well. Symbolism is there as well. Now, your aesthetic is very close to what you were doing when we met in 1992.
So long, 32 years.
over 32 years ago. I had the pleasure of finding Therez through a friend of mine. They were doing a fashion competition, and I was looking for designers, up-and-coming designers, to be in my first produced show with BET. It was called Fashion Preview 92. So I'm going all around. I went to London, I went to Paris. I ended up in New York through a friend, Mr. Blassingame. Yes. And she presented her collection, and I'm kicking everybody under the table. She's the winner. She's the winner. She's the winner. So of course she won, and I selected her to be in the Fashion Preview 92, and that launched my career.
Yes. And here she is launching me again with this collection here. So the energy and synergy is like, woo! Yes.
Well, you have been obedient to the ancestors, but it's a little deeper than that for me, because I know that you're carrying the legacy of all of these artisans. How does that make you feel to know that you have revived the Harlem Renaissance artisans that most people have forgotten about?
Or don't even know about.
And now here you are, bringing life back to these artisans. How does that make you feel?
It's so funny because I look at myself, I'm looking at you because I was finding the word, right? Preserving our culture.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is these artists, these impeccable, Romare Bearden, Jacob Lawrence, William H. Johnson, Elizabeth Catlett, Palmer Hayden, and Lois Mailou Jones. Without these artists, these are the artists that paved the way for the visual artists today.
Exactly.
They fought to have their images representative. You know, black faces, black bodies, black life, black culture. Their art dealt with social issues, political issues, economics, and cultural issues. So for me, I'm preserving their culture, and I'm bringing it forward, and I'm introducing their art in this way, using fashion as a canvas to this new generation. I think it's important that we realize where things come from and the doors that have been opened for us from our ancestors and people in the past. It's very, very important that we know this. So for me, it's just a lot of fun playing with their art. And another thing too, in this space, there were times when I lit my intention candle and I sat down and gave thanks to all of these artists. All of these artists have passed on. So in my private time, in my meditation, and in my planning, I always gave grace and I always gave thanks to them, because without them, this would not be here for me. So.
And without you, their legacy of this beautiful artwork would not be revealed to us today and to so many others that will feast their eyes on this art and say, wow, who created this? And so for you to be able to name all of these amazing artisans, it's just amazing. Now, you've been true to your aesthetic, I must say that. Tell us why you have chosen this Afrocentric, African-centered aesthetic that you use.
I chose this aesthetic, and it's been my aesthetic my entire career. I started off doing Afrocentric ready-to-wear using African prints. Then that moved me into Afrocentric wedding gowns. For me, it's all about culture.
Yes.
There is so much, when you really look at what melanated people give to the world in terms of creativity, it's like you can't deny it. There's so much beauty and so much culture in what we do. But it came to me, this direction came to me when I was 15 years old. I had a dream. Everything comes to me in a dream, thank you. And I remember being in bed, and I remember just la 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 la, and the drumming and the dancing and African prints and just the happiness. It was like so much beautiful energy. And I woke up, I had no idea that was what my direction was going to be. And then 10 years later, well, 8 to 10 years later, I was living in New York, attending FIT. Well, no, I only went to FIT one semester. Anyway, I was determined to do my own thing. Anyway, but I digress. So I walked into an African store. I was living in Harlem that just opened on the corner. And I walked in and I said, I'm a designer. I see all this beautiful fabric you have. I can make a collection for you if you give me a chance. So he gave me 144 yards of fabric. I got a cutting table and I went to work. And all the little scrap pieces left over from his collection, I would start to create my own collection around. But it's just been resonating in me for all these years. I'm not doing anything now. This is what lights me up and gets me excited. African textiles, our culture, not just African culture, but African American culture. It's like different than our culture in Africa, but just what we bring as a people into this, and wanting to educate people so they realize really the role we played and our ancestors played in contributing artistically to this country.
Certainly this gives way to the awakening that Africa gave it all to the world.
Yes.
We are the first makers of wearable art. We created hand-woven, beading, dyeing, embroidered arts. We are the first makers of these designs. And where did it start? It started on our bodies. Our bodies were the first canvases. So today you see all of our young people wearing body tattoos from their head to their toe, and they're like, oh my God, why are they doing this? Well, again, it's the DNA memory. They don't even know why they have these tattoos all over their bodies from their head to the toe. But it's something that kicks in. I don't care who and where you are. At some point, you're going to get an ancestral push, a nudge, something to let you know. It's like when I walk people through the exhibit here and they see these different symbols, they stop and like, that seems familiar. Yes, it is. It's in your DNA memory. So when you see the symbol of Giyami and you look at it, that is probably one of the oldest symbols in our African history, and it means God is omnipotent, God is all. So these symbols are prevalent throughout. But what you have done is you have taken artwork from artisans how many years ago? And you have revived them in this collection. So what do you feel like will be your next step in this fashion art? What do you see coming next?
There's a lot of things I see coming next. Spiritually speaking, I really don't talk about what I have upcoming. Energetic, it's just an energy thing for me, but I can tell you that I'm staying true to my aesthetic. This is it for me. This is my direction. I have 2 other collections in my head, but I got to get this one off the ground. You know, creators, we want to just get our stuff out, but we got to take a step back and make sure this one has solid legs.
Exactly.
But this is in terms of my career. this is the direction that I'm going in fashion art, and I create this for exhibits. So we're exhibits that tell stories of our lives and stories of our history. So I will continue in this direction, and always with Black art.
So I see that you have used burlap and wool and suede, and so did you have that in your mind when you first started this, or did something kind of change when you started to where it is now? I mean, did it go through phases?
The main point for me in creating this collection, I wanted the fabric to remain this exact same color as the colors on the painting. I did not want to deviate from that. But you know, when you think about the history of burlap, for example, and especially with Black people, and even going back to slavery, it was burlap in some countries was the only fabric that they wore. I mean, they would get a burlap dress as a child and wear that until they were a teenager. But so when I look at burlap, I know especially for our people, what that could mean. But I also like the richness of it. There's something about the burlap pieces that, because it's a natural fiber, because it breathes, to me, when I deal with natural fibers, they speak to me. Anything energetic really speaks to me. So that's with the burlap. I do have faux suede. I didn't use real suede on the faux, but even these gold pieces by Lois Maylou Jones, those are African brocades, Guinea brocades.
Yes,
those African
bazin, we call it.
Yeah, bazin.
Yes.
And then I use wool. So I try to keep the fibers as natural as possible because they just breathe differently. They showcase differently.
Well, we are so blessed that the ancestors have awakened this spirit for you to continue to carry their legacy. And we are happy that you heard it and you were obedient to the assignment. And
Still am, honey.
Right, and you got busy on it.
Still guided me. Woo!
So what would you say to young artisans coming up now? What would you say to the young wearable art artisans, to the fashionable art artisans that use art in their fashion? What would you say to them?
I would say really define your aesthetic and do what really lights you up, because to get out of bed in the morning and be so motivated by what you do, it has to light you up. But first determine what lane you want to be in, and it's okay. And it's okay if you bounce around, but really, I knew I had to set my foundation with Afrocentric design, but look at what you're doing and how that resonates really with your spirit. Is this something that's going to light you up and keep you motivated through your journey of design? And then just go for it. Dream big. I remember when I first started my company in New York, I was 25, and I was sitting with a business advisor, and he's like, oh, this is when I had the African prints, and he's like, okay, so what do you want to do? Do you want to print your own fabric? How are you going to get it there? Do you want a private jet? And I'm sitting here at 25, I ain't going to get in a private jet. What are you talking about? But what I learned from that was, who cares if you get it or not? Put it on paper. You don't know how it's going to manifest. So write things down or record them in the best way that you see fit for yourself, because you don't know how they're going to manifest. Because we create our lives where we know this is where we want to be, and we're like, okay, it's going to take me this direction, but no, you may come this way or you may come this way. And then tap into your spirituality, because there's times when I would go to bed at night and I'd be trying to figure out something, and I'm like, okay, God, you know what, I'm leaving it to you. I can't even. I throw it out there to him, he catches it, wakes me up in the morning, there's my answer.
Right.
So don't be afraid, really, especially this day and age. We are so spiritually connected. We have all this energy available to us, and especially this younger generation. I'm so proud of you guys, because you all are really tapping into it differently than my generation. I'm just now catching up, but for them, it's right in their lap. So, yeah.
And now with the wake of AI art and digital art, it's a whole new ballgame.
Yes.
So we have a project with the African Textile Museum called Fashion Diplomacy. And this fashion diplomacy is going to play in very well with what you're doing, but it is the way that we teach each other about our culture, what we wear. Because when people see you wearing things and they say to you, oh, where'd that come from? Then the dialogue starts to happen. Then you get to know about their culture, and our culture is exchanged. And that's what this is about. This Artist Talk with Artisans is about exchanging ideas, building concepts that have never been built before. Now, with this fashion diplomacy, we've invited many of the first ladies of Africa, because a lot of them have their collectives, and we're asking them, send us your artisans so that we can match them up with our artisans here, and let's see what God says about it. Let's see what we can create. Let's see what we can birth. Something new is going to happen. When I bring my sons and daughters from Africa that I've been working with, that are weavers and beaters and dyers and use the mud to make fabric and bark and trees and leaves, and put them together with my daughters at AIT, or all of these, MIT rather, and SCAD and all. Can you imagine what's going to happen? So what do you think the future of African-centered fashion is?
There's so many amazing African designers out there. Every time I go to Instagram, I'm like, oh, another one. Oh my God. I think really the world is it's so unlimited. I mean, there's so much that can be done. I'm working on a fashion collection AI generated outside of this. But I think creatively there's so much that can open up for us. Now the thing is, once you AI generate a fashion, can you produce it? Do you know how to sew it? That's a whole other thing. I think if you're a fashion designer in here, you have to know how to sew. For me, it was more important when I was in New York, not having graduated from school, but I always said I did. Yes, I graduated. They never checked because I had so much personality, you see. It's just, for me, I took a job in production because I really want to understand how clothing was made. I knew I could sketch and design, but if you can't make it, so I think that's going to be the hindrance with a lot of fashion designers. They have to know how to make that beautiful AI garment. But also one thing, that's great and that's the future, but one thing about this collection and what I'm doing, it's a lost art. People are not sitting down hand making stuff anymore. So when they hear the price, they're like, what? I'm just saying. It's all hand done. It's a lost art. And that's also one thing that I want to keep in the forefront. That's my aesthetic. If they say, well, we're going to do this by machine. Now I will get them printed so you can buy them, at a reasonable price. But my aesthetic is that hand done. As me as an artist.
Well, that's what makes it a collector's item.
Exactly.
And a museum quality piece.
Exactly.
Immediately when I saw the collection, I called Therez. I said, excuse me? We're doing this at the African Textile Museum. When?
Okay.
Not even can we?
Okay.
When?
2 weeks later.
So, when you see it, you know it. And when you know it, you have a responsibility to help promote it. And that's how it was when we first met. That's how it's going to be on the next collection, and we will be the first.
Yes,
right?
you will. I already said it.
I want you to say it in front of everybody.
Yes.
We will be the first.
And the next one, and you think this one's, woo, the next one's going to be very controversial.
Oh,
man. So make sure we got all your information. It'll probably be a year before it comes out, but a year goes by like this.
Yes.
Oof, that one right there.
I just want to say to you, Therez, that you continue to inspire me. And I've been doing this for a very, very long time. But your craftsmanship and your aesthetic, the way that you present your work and finish your work, and it's all a part of a lesson in how to be a great wearable art, fashion art artist. And we thank you for that so much. And we want to open up the floor for questions.
Yes.
See who would like to ask a question. Simply raise your voice and step over here so that we can get
Crystal.
you close into the shot here of our video, so that we'll know where this art. You can stand right by Therez or right behind her, whatever you want to do. Yes.
Okay. You mentioned something about the differences.
Dr.
Dr. LaVoie is an educator, by the way.
I love it. Okay, awesome.
Excellent, well done.
Thank you. You mentioned something about the differences between African art or the African aesthetic versus African American. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about that and what that really means and what the differences are. I mean, clearly for everybody, just kind of speak a little bit about why the emphasis on African American as opposed to African, which we all know where we came from. But I think that's an important piece, so I just wanted
Very
to
good question. Yes,
elaborate on
thank
that.
you, thank you. So what I meant by that was, I too have been to 6 countries in Africa. I've seen indigenous, beautiful African art. I know when I visited the different countries in Africa, there was a sense of just culturally speaking, it was very deep, it was very creative, it felt like home.
Yes.
And when I relate to the African American art, they're pulling from different energies. They're pulling socially, economically, politically, culturally. They had to fight a little differently to get their imagery out there in terms of putting Black faces and their history on canvases. So in my mind, the experiences are just a little differently. I think because as African American, coming up through a different struggle than what people from the continent, from Africa, had to deal with. And I think coming up from out of slavery, coming up from Jim Crow, coming up, and in my mind, and it's just the way that I look at it, just the experiences are just different, and we had to pull through in self-expression a little differently in this country. Did that answer your question? Thank you.
Now we have a single camera here, so if you want to be in the frame, you can come and stand
Around.
behind Therez. Who would like to have the next question? Anyone? Come right over here, daughter. Let's give her a round of applause for putting together this amazing art. There you go. That's where you need to be. Thank you.
I'll just ask, like, how did, after you completed this line, like, what did it change within you? Like, learning all these things about these different artists, like, how did it inspire you? How did it change you as a person?
Wow, these are deep questions. No, that's a good one.
Good question.
This whole experience really changed me in a sense of being grounded. Those of you who know me and have worked with me, you know my energy is, oh, there's Therez, just let it go. But what I got, first of all, I became very humbled in just the fact that I am able to use their art and use their art in a way that introduces it to other people, to other generations. It grounded me more in terms of, I gotta take this seriously, because look at what I'm presenting, look at what I'm choosing to take on in terms of my self-expression. These are serious artists who paved the way for us. They had to fight through discrimination and fight through fight through a lot of different things politically, economically, socially, in terms of sharing their culture. So for me, it's teaching me to slow down and really embrace these 6 artists that I've taken on to represent and to highlight, and to really learn how to gather my thoughts differently and translate what I'm trying to do in a different way, rather than being so scattered with, I'm an artist and this is it. It's like, no, this ain't about you, girl. This is about the artist, because this is not fashion art. This is art as fashion. So it really caused me to look deeper within and why I'm doing this and the meaning behind why I'm doing this.
I have a little question that just hit my spirit. Has any of the family members of any of these artisans reached out to you, or do you know of any of them that are living that might be inspired?
No, but I do have it in the works to do some fundraising for these artists, yes.
Okay, I think
that's one of the things, I can put that out, yes.
Next question. Come on, girl.
Come on, Caitlin.
Come on, Caitlin. You started.
Caitlin. Belt applique.
Come around so we can get you in the shot here.
I love her. She's I work in the film industry as well, and I have several film industry people, and this is one of my girls.
Welcome, Caitlin. What's your question?
So a lot of these pieces obviously have direct imagery applied to the garments, but there are also very distinct changes from the art that were interpreted in them. Were those differences conscious, and if so, what was the reasoning behind those changes?
Great question. Yes, it was conscious of me to make slight changes in their artwork, because I was looking at each piece, how do I bring it to the 21st century? How do I, because you'll notice some of the hair is different, some of the styling is different. I wanted to change it just enough to make it speak to our world today, the new generation, absolutely. So, yeah.
Well done, well done. Next.